Another week of big rises and big fallers in Indy Ball. Find out who's on which side on this week's episode of the Indy Ball Report podcast. We're back, episode number 327, the Indy Ball Report podcast, the only show that takes copious amounts of time to discuss how good were the Houston Apollos.
Better than I expected, I'm going to be honest with you. Better than I remembered, I should say. 17 wins. I mean, for the standard at the time of travel teams, especially a team that seemingly was a Pecos League team. I mean, hey.
I mean, someone should do a deep dive on those Houston Apollos. That'd be fascinating to watch.
Maybe some cool kid will. Don't give out too many ideas, though.
Hopefully Echo Smith will, because they're some cool kids. Got a whole song about it. You remember Echo Smith?
I do, man. I mean, look, I already had this on my mind right now, so I'll just say it on an off-topic start to this. We really sleep on the run that Matchbox 20 had going for a while, frankly. If we're talking about bands we don't think about anymore. I mean, Matchbox 20 was really crushing for a minute.
Yeah.
Unwell, banger. What was the other one that just
really crushing? I don't think of one song, though.
No. If You're Gone, How Far We've Come, which I think was not that great, but it's fine. It blew up. 3M, banger. Push is a good one. Push is really popular. Dude, If You're Gone, so good, man. If you're gone. Okay, can't. I'm not gonna do that now. Maybe I'll hit a karaoke night with that sometime. I do like the fact that the Houston Apollos just did not return to the Pecos. Low-key funny. They're like, we're not going back.
Big finish to the year. We're good.
Going out on top, kind of.
Just walking out. Breakfast Club finish with the fist in the air.
Yes, that was exactly what I was thinking. It's beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful.
That'd be a great
really, the Monday afternoon Memorial Day game being meaningful is like the Indy Ball version of Saturday detention. Dude, I should be hanging out with my friends. I should be hungover for this. Now I gotta care. Damn, dude.
In the sleepy little college town of Lincoln, Nebraska. Celebration was planned.
Looming over you. Oh man, they definitely bought all the champagne too.
We watched you get wheeled out of the clubhouse and right across the way.
I don't think they got that close, at least. So there you go.
So this week we're talking the Atlantic League and the Frontier League. We're starting the Atlantic League because we are approaching their midway mark. I think they only have about 2 weeks left, if I recall correctly, in the first half here. Although, admittedly, this conversation won't be terribly long here. York still has a pretty firm command in the north. High Point an equally as firm command in the south.
We're having the most Indy Ball of Indy Ball conversations, which is we already know how the first half is going to end. Let's talk about get into the conversation of who we favor for the second half / potential wild card hypothetical that may or may not exist, which is top tier content in mid to late June.
Like, if you want to point out, like, oh, they're doing well, like Southern Maryland right now is doing well, but they're more or less taking advantage of a very slumping Charleston, and they beat up Lexington. So, like, good job. You took some kids' lunch money.
Charleston just beat up Lancaster, though, so that's a different conversation.
And I'm about to get to this next point of, and if we want to talk about on the flip side, you know, a team that is struggling lately, Lancaster's the immediate spot there because they've lost 5 straight.
Yeah, and even worse than that, 3 of those are the Ducks, and they're directly competing in the standings. So they went in basically a game apart from each other, and now the Ducks got 4 games in hand on Lancaster. That's a tough scene for all involved. Yeah, man, we'll see. That Lancaster needs to bounce back on that one in this home and home. So hopefully they can back it up at home hopefully for their sake. I don't care, but
if we're
not that I don't care. That feels rough, but then if you're Long Island, you got a Sterling, Staten Island, Hagerstown, Staten Island coming to your place. So, I mean, not bad. Not
Like,
not bad setup. Long Island has a chance to really make some noise here, and then Hagerstown again, by the way,
I
and then
was gonna
Staten
say,
Island again.
if you're Long Island, are you
This stretch
gaslighting
of
yourself?
Staten Island, Hagerstown, Staten Island, Hagerstown, Staten Island.
Like, I need to know if you're at Long Island, are you gaslighting yourself into believing we can still win the North in the first half?
Here's my thing. Okay, all right, we'll play the game. Might as
Okay.
well. We're talking hypotheticals anyway. So let
Yeah.
me pull York's schedule. York has Staten Island, Lancaster, Staten Island, Lancaster, Staten Island. Are they kicking Staten Island back and forth between these two teams? They are. So one team. So Long Island has Lancaster and Hagerstown back and forth.
Yeah.
They have Lancaster, and then they have Hagerstown, Staten Island back and forth. York has Staten Island and Lancaster back and forth. What do we? I mean, I don't hate, like, I get putting divisional teams together to finish a half. I kind of like that, but it was a little crazy. So you figure York should be fine because all those teams are struggling. I don't see Long Island picking up 6 games in that stretch. I think they'd have to play a few against York to make that work, and they just don't have it. Yeah, because you figure even if 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, even if it doesn't go well, odds are they go 8-7 in that stretch. York does,
Yeah.
which means Long Island have to go 14-1. Now, I think it's reasonable to think Long Island goes 12-3, in which case we have a conversation. I mean, York going 6-9 is feasible, but just highly unlikely.
That's the thing, right? Like the schedule lines up better on Long Island side, but I just think there's too much ground to be made up, like you're saying. I
mean,
think
York does struggle with dumb teams occasionally, but
that's a lot struggling.
yeah. I mean,
And like most of these teams that they got are what 3-7 in the last 10, so they're not exactly world beaters right now.
I know. They're not getting them at their best. In fact, Staten Island is a team that looks better record wise than they actually are because they got the hot start and then fell. So.
Yeah, so like that's the thing. Like the North feels pretty well set there. I mean, at this point, I think you guys start just looking toward the second half of your pretty much all of them. But if you're Long Island, I understand the desire to keep pushing for it. So that second half North is where it's interesting to me because Lancaster is normally good for that run. You would assume York backs off a little bit and starts playing the make sure they're rested and you have your lineup set game. And then it becomes, is it Long Island that's going to push for that? Is it going to be Lancaster that's going to push for that? Hagerstown, I think, is kind of out of this conversation this year. And Staten Island, as of recent, has not done much, especially considering past history in the second half, to really say, oh, yeah, they're a threat. So
I will flip it. Staten Island did better than we thought last year in the second half. With a week to go, they were in the conversation. Then they dropped 7 out of 8, I think, to finish the year. So there was a weird thing that happened at the end that made it look less competitive. Yeah. I'm going to point to what I'm interested in. So again, I think I did a reminder of it maybe on my pod and your pod in the past week and a half. But the playoff system for the 2-half system is it's division winners for both halves make it, so it's 4 teams. But if the same team wins a division twice, it goes to a wild card, which is the best overall record of a non-division winner from either division. And here's the interesting one, right? So let's look at Long Island, and we just said they have a good stretch coming up, but they could take 10 out of 15 here. So if you look at the team that they are close to, so if we look at the wild card teams, right? It is Southern Maryland, a game behind them, or a game and a half behind them is Long Island. And then and then 3 or 4 games back from there is Lancaster, Charleston, that crew, right? And then Lexington's in that bundle, Staten Island's right behind them. So that's what you got. So it's really Southern Maryland, Long Island looking to try to get ground away from the teams behind them for a potential wildcard race. So Long Island has that stretch. Southern Maryland, listen to their next 15 here.
Okay.
They finished the series with Charleston, right? But then they go 3 with Gastonia, who's been struggling, 3 with Hagerstown, 3 with Lexington, who's been struggling, even though they've been bouncing back, but they've been beating bad teams. They've been doing a good job of that. I'm not taking away from them. 3 with Hagerstown again, 3 more with Lexington to finish the half. So everyone, if it's like Southern Maryland and Long Island in like hungry hippos, just trying to gather up as many wins as possible here before, resetting the schedule and moving forward and hoping their overall record hangs in there, because it's overall record in both halves. So get your wins where you can. These games are not meaningless to these teams for sure.
Yeah, what's High Point's record to finish it out, or schedule to finish it out, rather?
It's a good question.
Depending on what that is,
Lexington, 3 with it's not. 3 with Lexington, 3 with Gastonia, 3 with Lancaster, 3 with Gastonia, 3 with Gastonia. So
okay, yeah. So High Point should comfortably have this.
So this is another conversation that will be worth discussing. We sort of discussed last week the lack of parity in the Pioneer League, where the low is really low, the top is really top, like really good.
Yeah.
We detailed off the pod, and I talked about it on my Pioneer League grades report card video just now, that they do have a weird situation where the top is looking a little more top heavy because the good, not great teams have had a really easy schedule. So that's kind of a weird thing going on. The Atlantic League has a weird one right now where, like, I mean, we just went through 3 straight teams where, like, wow, that's an easy schedule. 4 straight teams, right? Because Lancaster, we felt the same too, where one of them is top 2. So High Point, Long Island, Lancaster, York, we all felt like had easy schedules. And that's because those 4 of those top 5 teams, we don't even see the bottom 5 teams there as like a challenge to them right now, which is not great. Don't want that. But I guess this is sort of the weird side effect of that too. Southern Maryland's won 9 of 10. That's funny.
Honestly, I'm willing to have that whole parity conversation about just about every league. I mean, the American Association.
That's where I was going. My bad. Thank you for being an adult and actually remembering where we were going there. I got distracted by Southern Maryland's schedule.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, if you look at just about everybody's league, right? Pioneer League, I think it's just the most pronounced because you have the ongoing NOCO situation,
and one big division.
Yeah, and you have one big division, and you have Great Falls. So you have 2 that are like, oh, wow, you are notably farther back than everybody else. And then you have a lot of teams where it's like 10 and 16, 11, 16, 12 and 15, and then teams that are, around 500, and then you start to shoot up from there. So you have clusters, really, of that smaller middle cluster, and then the 2 big ones. So it's a little bit more pronounced and easier to see. The Frontier League, the way you look at it's a little bit differently just because their division setup is different. We'll talk about that later on. But even then, it's kind of clear cut, like, oh, yeah, each division has at least one team where you look at and go, they're not contending for anything here.
I mean, and it's crazy because if you look, and we will get there, but I will say to back that up, I mean, the clear haves and have-nots in the Frontier League is funny. There's only like 2. If we were doing a mid-report today, there's like 2 teams in this like 18-team league that I think about as mid. Like Mississippi is close to 500, but it's because they keep beating the crappy teams and they keep losing to the good teams. So I guess that's mid. But like Lake Erie is 17 and 16, they're kind of around there. Joliet's 19 and 17, but I consider Joliet a good team in this league. Gateway, Washington, Tri-City, Schaumburg, Sussex, and Quebec. I think we'd all consider them safely good, whether we want to talk strength of schedule or not, different. But then every other team down there, if they're on my schedule, I kind of feel good about it, other than maybe the New York Boulders. Because it's Mississippi, New York, Brockton, Evansville, Florence, Trois-Rivières, New Jersey, Down East, Ottawa, Windy City. Literally, if I'm one of the other top teams just talked about, I'm not sweating much there. So it's a weird setup. You're right.
Yeah, it's just like, it feels like across the board, the town's concentrating in 1 or 2 areas, and there's 1 or 2 areas that just can't get anyone. And I'm trying to figure out what is the common theme among these areas that aren't getting any talent here. Is it a location thing? Is it a facility thing? Is it the coaching kind of thing? Is it the way the organization's ran? What exactly about it makes it like, oh, not that appealing? Because, like I said, even if you want to look to the American that just largely ducked it, everybody's like relatively close. Like Gary's the outlier here, obviously at 10 and 26, but even then, they're 5 games worse than the team in front of them. So they're not like notably shittier. It's just they're like, yeah, this is definitely the worst team here. And then everybody else is like 15 and 21, 16 and 20, 20 and 17, 19 and 16. You're like 17 and 19, 16 and 22 for Lincoln, and that's not that far off. Like everyone's pretty well clustered together. The only real outlier is like Sioux City that has 24 wins, but even then they're only 2 better than Kansas City. So like, it's by far the most parity.
So I have 2 thoughts, and part of that is still lack of parity, right? Because Gary, you're talking about Gary only being 5 games back in Milwaukee, right?
Yeah.
Milwaukee is only 5 games above Gary because the teams above Milwaukee are, for the most part, significantly better than Milwaukee. So whenever Milwaukee is playing one of the better teams, they do just collect losses. And that's why Milwaukee can be 5 games away from Gary. While I think if Milwaukee played a 3-game set with Gary, I think, I don't want to speak on your behalf here, but like I would kind of look at that from a Gary perspective and be like, hope we can get one of these. Like, it doesn't mean I feel like they're close. I mean, but Gary's still below 300. I think it's just that other teams are getting those. I would call, so let's call Gary a bad team for lack of a better term, just so, because I need to classify here. And then say Milwaukee is below average. There's very little in the average, and then there's a jump up to above average, where you're starting Chicago, Lake Country, Cleburne. Which means there's 3 teams in their own division where Milwaukee's just going to kind of get pounded on, which is weird.
Yeah.
I have another. I have a follow up on your parity thought and what it is, but I can shelve it until we're done with it.
All I was going to say is that Milwaukee did take the sweep to open the year against Gary, and then they followed it up by winning 2 of 3 about 2 weeks ago against Gary. And admittedly, it was a 5-run win on a Saturday, but that's coming off of an 11-run loss for Gary to Milwaukee, and then they followed up with a 4-run loss. And they followed up the Milwaukee loss by losing 5 straight. So, yeah. So I guess to your point, 2 of 3 for Milwaukee isn't, out of character for it. It's just they're 5-1 against them thus far. So I don't know if that helps to prove it, disprove it. It's a game off from what you're saying, and it's a game off from it being complete annihilation. So it is too small of a sample to really say one way or the other. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Now to the how do we get here conversation. So here's my theory, right? I think 2020 and the largely off year, because even leagues that did play league American, it wasn't the same because there were teams who didn't play, so there was a lot of moving around, a lot of shuffling, all that weird stuff going on. I think from 2019 to 2021, we saw a lot of turnover in the managing and front office ranks. We saw a lot of changes between the financial situation of teams before to after. And we saw the game change a lot, like Indy Ball, the face of Indy Ball changed a lot with the addition of all the new teams and things like that. Now, I think you have 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. That is enough time for multiple things to happen. Either one, coaches and maybe baseball ops persons or whoever GMs sort of standard practice to be set in place, and we know exactly who they are and what the organization is going to be, or for turnover to start happening and a pattern to emerge of no matter who is running this, it seems to be bad or good, or, oh, this seems better or worse than it was. And now we have something to compare to. We have maybe somebody who was there 2021, 2022, and now somebody who was here the last 2 years with significantly different results. So we can kind of point to that person or those people who have shifted in being responsible with some evidence to back that up for whatever's going on. So I think with that, players are getting a much clearer idea in this modern era, because similar things have happened with big changes in Indy Ball in history, but communication is so quick. So many people know each other and have phone numbers and follow each other on socials and all that I think guys are more in tune with where to go and where not to go. And it makes it difficult to bring people in if your reputation is not good. I think it's interesting to see realistically from where I'm sitting, and I know Texas is a loaded market from a baseball perspective, and there's a lack of competition among Indy Ball down there, but it is always surprising to see Cleburne recruiting as well as they do. It's hot as hell. It's more far bus trips than anyone else has. And yet every year they have one of the most stacked teams. And I think there's a word of mouth there that is a well-run organization and people in charge know what they're doing. And it seems to be consistently, drawing people in. I think we've hit on Gary enough. I don't need to talk about it, but I do find it interesting teams that used to recruit like the big guys and be seemingly like one of the dominant recruiters in free agency who are struggling now. I just called Milwaukee on some stuff the other day, and I may or may not have had anything that I was correct about on that one, but I will say I wasn't until further notice. So I don't want to dunk on them, but like they are kind of an example of like a team, like they were pulling some big free agents, and lately, like when I'm trying to think, like they've had some good ones, but not at the same rate. And there's some surprising ones that I think guys seem to like Sioux Falls. Of course, it's a good offensive environment, but I think they like the coaching situation over there. Like for like just pulling some examples just straight out of the American Association, it seems like guys are vibing with certain things. I think the Monarchs had a potential issue with getting guys in. I think that sort of rectified itself for whatever reason. For the same reason, I'm interested in watching. I don't want to talk Frontier League too much, but like why we're saying we're interested to see what happens with Tri-City this year. They seem to be doing well, but we'll see what happens. So yeah, I think there's some patterns emerging, and that's why I've always said, and I was really concerned about Mark Mason in Hagerstown when this team sucked year 2, because everybody said, yo, that Hagerstown setup is good. Like that ballpark's nice. Their facilities are good. Like that's a good spot to be in. And when that team could not recruit a good ball club, I was like, ooh, Mace might be in trouble here. And then we saw what happened. So I'd be interested in a team like that in the next couple of years, because I think guys do talk. Like everyone seems to know. I've heard from guys in the American Association that have already said, yeah, I heard Hagerstown's good setup. I was like, all right, good to know. And I mean, that's a big deal, man. It's quality of life. So that's my theory on the thing, at least. And I think that's why there's haves and have-nots and it's being exposed a little bit now. Because also now we're seeing, multiple years of perhaps not spending much from organizations. It takes a couple of years for those cracks to show, and now they're showing. Yeah,
which then brings us back to why is there such a dichotomy in all these other leagues? Like we talked about the American Association, their parity, and how they seem to do a generally good job in their recruiting. Then you look over into the Atlantic League, a league that should have similar, if not better, resources, and they seem to have this huge divide here, this chasm.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I mean, do you have any thoughts off the top of your head? I'm just trying to think back through, like, I'm also scrolling for examples of teams that might make something click in my head a little more.
I do wonder if to a degree it comes down to just the business angle of it. What you have to go off of both post baseball and currently, right? Like if you're an older player, at a certain point you start to realize, like, I'm playing for me now. I'm not playing to try and advance my career. I'm playing because I want to play, even though I understand that, like, the actual professional angle of this is probably going to top off on this level, maybe AA at best. So there isn't money to be made going forward with this. This is for me until I can say I'm done and I'm good. That's where that is. So if you're in a market that maybe you are more likely to get a job coaching or be able to talk to guys and be in a room and work with coaches that will be like, oh yeah, no, this is how you set up an academy down in Florida. This is how you set up an academy out in Arizona, something like that. I could see that if you're part of an organization that in the front office and ownership ranks, they have more connections into something that you would want to transition into. I could see that being it. Maybe I'm overthinking it a bit, but I could see that having an appeal. I also think a lot of it too is sometimes it's just dumb luck. I mean, to have it be that widespread across 3 leagues is odd, and I think it's more than just luck. It'd be really odd if it was. But, I mean, even look, we'll keep an eye on Atlantic League because that's where the conversation is at the moment. But, like Lancaster, Staten Island, these are teams that aren't that far gone. They're under 500, but they're not that far gone. Charleston's a game under. Lexington's 2 games under. Like, yeah, it's disappointing from where they were expected to be or how they started the year, but it's not like they're that far gone. That's just been bad luck in the schedule. And like in some cases, like the Lexington roster, we had doubts about walking in the door. But, there's just sometimes you get bad luck where you get some injuries that pile up. You get a couple guys signed at the wrong time, and you're just not able to replace them in the middle of the season. There's examples in each case where, like, a case-by-case basis, you're like, oh, that makes sense. It's just when you start putting each of the case-by-cases together, it starts to look like something that it's not.
Maybe. My only thing on this is I'm sort of doing a look back through the last now 5 years of Atlantic League, for example, and just looking like sort of by win percentage, what's the gap look like between the top and the bottom? And in 2021, it was like 117-point gap. And then it was up to about 300 in 2022, but they had a couple new teams. So that kind of tracks, that can shake things up. And then it was back in the 200s, like in relation to like points of winning percentage between the top and the bottom, back up into the 300s last year. And now this year we're up into the 500s. Now, obviously that's because we do have a very good team in High Point, a very bad team in Hagerstown, but it's almost 300 between the second worst and second best teams too. So we'll watch that trend for sure. I agree with your take on like, you know, veterans and guys getting a realistic look at who they are and understanding of where they fit in things now. Things have settled down post COVID and being like, you know, what is my best move here? Also, you know, I wonder about weird things that are really off the radar for us and probably will be for the foreseeable future. But things like, sometimes I wonder like job opportunity stuff, you know, this is a part-time job for most guys at this point. It's just not going to pay you the full living wage you need. So you need something else. And if it allows you to like stay at least in touch with that stuff while also playing your season, like that's not a bad setup. So there could be a lot going on. And I think Mexico has not helped, by the way. Mexico has definitely hurt it because the fastest way to lose parity is to lose pitching. And we talked about last week, so we don't have to rehash it, but like that is definitely something that's happening here. Yeah.
And it just drains itself through. But also the family angle is another thing you got to factor in too. Mm-hmm. Where's the best place? If you have a family, where do you want to play? Do you want to be closer to where they are, or are you just going to take whatever job you get?
Bro, and I think there's a reason High Point is always good. And one, it's because Jamie Keefe's a dog and he's so good at building a roster. That is one thing I'm not going to take away from Jamie Keefe here. But also, High Point is a sweet setup, man. It's a good college town. Young guys like it. It's a chill town with pretty stuff around it. Family people like it. I was just avoiding using the phrase family guy. There's good, a local economy, a lot of good connections to that North Carolina area to like other professional organizations, a lot of good baseball players coming from the Carolinas right now. So that's all based there. It's not all hometown guys, but I'm saying there's like 4 or 5 different things that can pull 4 or 5 different types of players to High Point. Even that gives an advantage over something like Quebec, where if you look at it, like also not to mention like Jamie Keefe knows what the hell he's doing, and that's a good organization. But if you look at Quebec, like the draws are like, you're cool with the travel. It's like, that's a negative, but if you're cool with it, whatever, is the French Canadian angle, which is if that's your culture, that is great for you. You get to live in it most of the time. And it's a good team and the coaching is good and development's good. Like I'd say there's more pros to High Point. Like if you're weighing the markets of 2 top teams in this, so there's like, I think there's a lot of different things on how they can draw, and then like how much easier it can make recruiting as well, I guess is my point. So maybe it's just as also guys see more cities as they travel too, more road trips to some of these towns. They go, I'm good. Like, I think I've seen enough of that town. And I wonder, I've always theorized that on Southern Maryland. I think Southern Maryland, part of it is they're a little cheap and maybe lack some like connections to draw in major league level talent. But that theory always hurt a little more when it was looking at like, they got like Matt Latos in the bullpen. Are we sure about that? But like they still don't have a lot of major league talent that comes in. And part of me just wonders, like, do guys with like major league talent who are trying to get back to the league just not want to be that far to the middle of nowhere? We always say that about Waldorf. Technically there's stuff around it, but like it is one of the further out from airports, like convenient airports, large airports type of places. Yeah. And I wonder sometimes, if that hurts them as well, like weird things like that, but I don't know.
I mean, I could say it.
Sorry, I was like, that landed on a question mark. I mean, I said on the pod before, I mean, Ricky Henderson played for Newark back in the day because Newark Airport was there. And he was like, Ricky's going to get on a flight if Ricky gets a call. Like, all right, cool. I know Lexington drew well. I know Brandon Phillips was far more open to Lexington. Obviously he was in Cincinnati, so it's one thing, but because Lexington has a nice airport and it's easy getting in and out of Lexington, or if you need to, you can go to Cincinnati, an hour north, basically an hour and a half, and you're golden. So there was some of that as well. The Carolinas also have some good airport access. So like things like that could affect things, but
an interesting point to end the Atlantic League on for the week. So,
I guess that was the Atlantic League conversation, wasn't it?
Ain't that something? We're looking at the Frontier League now. So we got a lot more interest in the Frontier League, I think. There's a lot more that's up in the air. Obviously, the lack of a half system will do that. Mm-hmm. And it seems like we have about 3 teams in the Atlantic Division that you're like, oh, these are good teams. And then you kind of bring a mixed bag, and you flip to the Midwest, and you're like, all right, there's definitely 2 teams here that are good. And then there's like 3 teams, 4 teams that you're looking and go, what are you? And then there's like 1 or 2 teams that you're like, oh, you're not very good, are you?
Can I say the first thing, which is not going to address anything you just said?
Go for it.
The correct naming conventions here, it really just hit me how much it annoyed me as I was doing my Frontier League report card video, is the East League, or the East Conference, if you want to go conference. I don't like it, but I get it. The Frontier East, and then the Frontier, I would say probably the divisions, you go the North and the South, and then there you go. And then, or you can even go Northeast if it's bothering you, and you could even go a Mid-Atlantic. I don't love that, but you could do that direction. Out West, you go Western League, the West League, whatever you want to do with it. And then you have, I understand it's tough because you got Midwest teams in both, but you got to find a way to do like a North and South with that, I think, because it's just weird the way it is. The Midwest Central Division, the Midwest West Division makes me want to have an aneurysm, makes me want to. It's not, I get that's not a choice, but like, I'm more open to it than I would be before I heard the words Midwest West Division. So don't love that. I get why we ended up there, but also the Midwest Division's the team. Here's my problem. The Midwest, I don't like Mississippi playing in the Midwest. First of all, that's because they're not in the Midwest. So that's a problem for me. So it's the West. And then you can go, maybe you should have chopped it more down to the South. I get that would have been a longer commute because all the North would have basically just been in Chicago, but also that is the mess you made for yourself when you basically built a team around Chicago, a league around Chicago. Different conversation. It's fine. I'm good. I got that on my system now. Thank you.
I guess like the easiest way would have just been East-West Conference and then North-South.
Just
North,
deep
South.
sigh. Yeah, I think that probably was the move. I get why I wasn't. I will take this, by the way, over those leagues like the Atlantic League used to do, where it's like the Liberty and like
the Liberty and
whatever,
Freedom.
the Liberty and Freedom. I would.
So we were just about to say mixed bag for all but 3 teams in the Atlantic and mixed bag for all but like 4 teams in the Midwest. Thoughts on the mixed bag here?
I want to give a couple shout outs, which is shout to Brockton. They are 3 games below 500, but they are middle of the pack in their division, which is kind of fun for them. Sort of buoyed by Trois-Rivières and Ottawa being absolutely diabolically bad so far. But hey, take it where you can get it. And Mississippi, hanging out around 500, also buoyed by the fact that Windy City is brutally bad. But hey, we're getting there. Honestly, we dunk on New England quite a bit and / Brockton, but they were 2 from the bottom of their division last year, and they are mid-pack in their division this year. So like,
and they're only a game back of where Rockland is right now too. So like,
there are 9 teams in the Atlantic, and they're 5th.
They are starting to, they're quietly clawing out. See, the problem is they have Quebec in their division and Tri-City in their division. If you were to
Quebec does not care about them.
Exactly. See, like if you were to drop them into the East Division, I wonder where things would be.
I mean, if you drop them into the East Division, even with their current schedule, they're a half game out of second place. They are almost 10 games out of first, of course, because Sussex are running away. But that would be an interesting little math equation. I think they could be pretty solid.
Like, I think at worst, they're in their same position here. I think with the appropriate scheduling changes, they're pushing Sussex a little bit. I think Sussex still has them probably by about 4 to 6 games, give or take. But I think they're a lot better of a team. Brockton's one of those teams that now, like, I'm looking, I'm like, oh, yeah, you know what? Maybe you have to actually start watching them a bit because they don't seem bad. Not good, but not bad. They're definitely, like, in that mid grouping. Of whatever I'm going to say about the Boulders, I could probably say about Brockton. And I'm willing to wager before doing any sort of analysis on scheduling and overall play that they're a fairly comparable team.
I would say there's a good chance that they pick up. Yeah, I think they could pick up over the course of a season, like 6 games. So what, they're probably call it a third of the way through that season right now. So they could probably have another 2 games in hand right now. So call it 18-17. So they'd be hanging out in second place. I mean, a distant second probably, but second.
But an interesting position nonetheless here. And like the other thing you have to factor in right now for them.
Doesn't help that Sussex swept them early series.
Like,
Womp womp.
like right now, okay, Sussex probably getting a postseason spot no matter what.
Crazy.
Quebec probably getting a postseason spot no matter what. Tri-City probably odds-on favorite to get that first wild card. Second wild card, Brockton and New York are currently fighting for that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah, you're right about it.
Like, that's the thing, that extra wild card in there.
Dude, this league is so much better with 4 playoff spots, by the way. Thank God they did that.
It makes, part of me is like a small playoff format guy, doesn't love it.
I agree.
The other part of me is like, it does make things a lot more interesting because right now it's just the 3 would be like, all right, so we know what's going to happen. Barring a collapse, what's going to happen.
I agree. And there is something at this lower level. That's not to dunk on a lower, I mean, compared to the major leagues. I'm a small playoff major league guy. I think somewhere at this level where it is so important to generate positive headlines and interest that it is good to keep your team as long as possible in a playoff race when you are at least competitive, right? Yeah. And I like that. Here's my positive is that a team like Brockton is not just dead in the water because Quebec exists. Or Tri-City isn't basically dead in the water despite being 22-12 because Quebec exists. So I think that's good. Other than that, I mean, it will be interesting, that New York race. I am mildly objecting at this point to the assertion that Sussex, I guess they are safe to get in. You're right. The division win is the one that kind of gets me, but I think you're right. Cause what is it, like 11 games back to the next wildcard team behind them?
Yeah.
I think.
Well,
Math is 8 games. I'm so stupid. Wait, 10, 12.
It's about 9 because right now New York has that last wild card. So
really, I'm measuring it back to who the 5th team is, which is 457 Brockton, right? So it's 9.5 games up. So they're 9.5 over. I mean, I don't see Brockton putting together the run. I could see the Boulders making a run at Sussex, even though it's a 9-game lead, just based on there's so much weird crap that happens to the Frontier League. And I'll remind you, I think New York was up 6 or 7 games already on Quebec last year. Now Quebec's a different animal, sure. But like the wheels can fall off quickly depending on scheduling is the point. And we've already been talking about lack of parity. So if you end up, if you hit a run of the top teams, it could be something, but I don't necessarily worry about it, but I wouldn't put it to bed totally. Weirdly enough, we're in the line where another week, if they're up by 9 or 10 games, I'm like, okay.
Oh yeah. Like at this point, I feel comfortable saying that they played well enough, and with the way their schedule plays out, they should have this. It's just when they get there is when I'm going to get curious. They played Quebec hard, Sussex's. Their 2 drop games to them weren't terrible. It came down to 1 bad inning, and then 3-0 shutout is what it is. You're never sweeping them. So you're always going to drop one. So if you call that your drop game, it comes down to you had a bad inning. You had at the worst time, but you had a bad inning. So there was some confidence to go off of there. And I think at this point, you've proven that, all right, anything in our division, we feel good about. So if you get New York in round 1, you feel pretty good, especially with home field, to take that series. It's when you get to that following round, what's it going to be? Because you'd have to assume it's Quebec that you're going to have to go through if you want to be playing for hardware.
Yeah. I'm on a weird thought, and I'm sorry that this is not necessarily relevant to what you were saying, but with the game I was playing, once I realized that our 4th playoff spot right now battles between a 16 and 18 and a 16 and 19,
yeah,
my thought was, what 1 in blank chance, we'll phrase it that way, a 1 in, whatever number chance that Ottawa finds a playoff spot by the end of this. I mean, of the bad teams, they're the most likely to get it together. They are also the furthest away, at least in the Atlantic, from a playoff spot. I think they're 5.5 out right now.
I don't really
but the teams they're chasing are not impressive.
I hear what you're saying, but they have done nothing to really earn my confidence.
I know they are not doing anything to help the argument.
Like, for as good as they were last year and the year before, like they kind of got in, but once they got in, they were, an actual issue. Quebec had to struggle against them. And I kind of use that as my barometer of, oh, are you a good team when it matters? And they proved that they are a good team. They're just not good enough. This year, I mean, that takes a lot to limp in, and you're going to have to do that move probably to Quebec in round one out the gate. I don't love their odds of that one bit. And, like, even if you don't get Quebec, you draw Sussex instead, right? Because right now we're going to assume those are your division winners. They haven't exactly played Sussex that great. You know, they keep losing to them. They have a couple of close games, but, you know, 1 or 2 close losses, okay, still hanging in there with them. 4 or 5, you're just losing to them now.
Yeah, I mean, they'll probably have to win. I'm trying to think what it will take to get into playoffs. I mean, I would say minimum is about 45 wins in the Atlantic, which means Ottawa's going to have to go 34 and 25 down the stretch here, which feels unlikely. The odds are not great. Yeah, I'm not optimistic about that one.
Yeah. I want to look at the Midwest here because I think
agreed.
That's a far more open division here, right? Because you look at the Central, Lake Erie, you're trying to figure it out. You don't really know what to make of them. Evansville is hanging in with Washington, but they can seal the deal in Washington. Florence is finding themselves at the moment. Washington, it should be winning that division, right? And then you flip the script onto the West. Schaumburg seems to be the best team in the Midwest as a whole right now, certainly in the West, period. Gateway keeps tripping themselves, it feels like. They feel like they should be better than what they are, but they just can't help themselves. And then you look at Joliet, that's only a game and a half back of them. They're currently in a playoff position here. It's not that well secured. You have, Mississippi a couple back of them. Flipping to the other side, you have Lake Erie close by. There's plenty of teams that are nipping at their heels at the moment, and it's hard to really get a gauge.
I was going to say, I mean, for all the lack of parity talk, I mean, removing Windy City because there's sort of an extenuating circumstance currently with everything going on there, the other 8 teams in the Midwest are all within 8.5 games of each other.
See, the issue, though, is with that,
I'll say the top 8 teams, I will just point out for context from what I'm looking at here, the top 8 teams in the Atlantic are separated by 15 games.
Like, I hear what you're saying with that, but also you've got to look at the middle here of who's really standing out, right? Yeah,
and it's the thing I said, I guess a lot of the standings can lie because, like I said, with the Milwaukee-Gary comp, they're only a few games apart from each other, but like really when Gary and Milwaukee play, is it close? Like, is it as close as it seems on paper? So I think I'm probably going back on what I just said with that, by thinking that way. But, no, you're probably right. I mean, how do you think this starts to shake out? So I'm working under the assumption that our 4 playoff spots are going to come from, Schaumburg will be 1.
Yes, I agree with that.
I'm going to say Washington will be the other. I would say more comfortably because they have a bit of breathing. I mean, they don't have a ton of breathing room. Well, they do kind of over Lake Erie. And I think Lake Erie is going the other direction, right? So that gives us now 4 teams for the last 2 spots. We feel like Gateway is probably favorite.
Yeah, Gateway should be for now, but there's something about them where I just don't trust them. I mean, you'd probably go the other 2 500 teams to really be fighting for that other one. When Joliet and Lake Erie, but then you look and you have one team 3 games under, one team 2 games under. So,
yeah, I mean, the thing I'll point out with Mississippi, with Joliet, is their real chaser right now feels like Mississippi. Like I look at okay, when it comes down to what games are they going to cough up, and Joliet's played 1, 2, 3, 9 against Mississippi, and they've won 6. So like they seem notably better than Mississippi.
Yeah.
Now some of them have been close. That last series in particular had close ones, but they're getting wins. So I feel like they're not going to get caught from behind here, and they're going to kind of get a fair shot at catching Gateway. The question remains, how much is this Lake Erie situation going to slide out? Because we were talking, it was funny. I mean, we just said 2 weeks ago we did our first ranking, and Lake Erie was like at the top of their division, and we were like, yeah, and they didn't even get a vote in the top 10. Which we should start working in some top 10 discussion at some point, but this week will not be that week. Perhaps we have a hand to edit with. But yeah, I mean, that start was what, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 2. Yeah. And since then, they are 8 and 14. So I think Lake Erie is, I think we can consider them going the wrong direction here. They are split in their last 10 games, but, that's just based on who they're playing, in my opinion. Got some games against, they split 2 with Jersey recently, lost 2-3 to Florence, took 2-3 from Evansville, lost 2-3 Tri-City. And that's how you end up there.
Yeah, I do wonder why that is the case with Lake Erie. They seem to still be a good pitching team. I guess it's got to go back to the batting issues, which have plagued them for a little bit of time now. But,
yeah, I mean, they also, part of it was, I think, a start that was, I'll call it strange. They won their first 2 in New York, but those are hard to read into because it was a doubleheader that they played those 2 games on.
Yeah,
So
a lot of
rain. And then, when it's a doubleheader, you're not going to play Sunday, you're not going to play Monday. You can literally, you have not played a game yet. You can throw anybody you want. So it's a little hard to gauge what's going on there. Then they took 2-3 from Florence, not a great team. Took 2-3 from Ottawa, bad team. Swept Windy City, bad team. And then they got to some real competition, dropped 2 to Evansville, split 2 with Washington, dropped 2-3 to Windy City, can't have it. Dropped 2-3 to Schaumburg, dropped 2-3 to Evans, to Tri-City. Finally won a series again with Evansville, and then lost 2-3 to Florence. So we see the downward spiral there. And I think it is just the competition they're playing. And yeah, you're right. They cannot hit baseballs.
Yeah. So
you're going to need to hit baseballs. That's like half the game.
Many would say that. That's a popular theory going
around. The pitching also is not good, by the way. That's part of the problem. They're bottom 3 in the league in runs allowed, and they're bottom 2 in runs scored. So no. I'm wrong. Ignore me. My brain just went right to Windy City for some reason, as if it was just called to dunk on them for no reason. Okay. So yeah, top 4 pitching staff in the league, but there's just, the offense is barely outpacing that. And, in the way of they're barely scoring more runs than they're allowing. And I think that's just not ideal. And a lot of that was from that early run.
Yeah, I don't really have too much else to add on that. It's just the West is hard to figure out here because I feel like there's a lot more records here that are misleading. And you can just see it even in the last 10. There's only one team that isn't either 5-5 or 6-4. And that's Windy City. So everybody else is essentially playing 500 baseball over the last week and change. Whereas when you look at the North, it's a lot more like, oh, yes, we see here. There's a lot more in the way of 7-3, 4-6. It starts to separate itself a little bit.
Yeah, it's a bit muddy, and there are monsters in that mud, as we know. So
yes, a team that's doing surprisingly well for their first year, really.
I know they're hanging in. They are benefiting, I think, from softer competition, but that's fine. Look, other new teams have had bad competition and fallen completely off the rails, so they're making it happen. Down East, honestly, doesn't have a bad schedule, and they're still making it work. Other than that 6-game stretch against Quebec was a brutal turn of the schedule.
Yeah, and now having to, they got to win against Tri-City last night, so that's good.
Yeah, they're playing ball.
Yeah, they're dealing. The 20-2 route not great, and the 10-3 route not great, but they got to win. So hey.
Lake Erie, the offense, I still think, it's so funny to say it, but they are significantly better than last year. That's the funny thing. Dario Gomez, Joey Wright, Derek Vegas, all good, but just, it's just not coming together that well.
Any other thoughts on the Frontier League as a whole?
No, I don't think so. Not this week, a little bit more getting some clarity here, but it'll be interesting to see how this week goes. I'm looking at the weekend schedule before we move on too far here, but what we got here? Mississippi Gateway, not that interesting. Schaumburg,
Miners up to Quebec could be interesting.
Ones. Lake Erie going up to Brockton, needing some wins is interesting. Tri-City having to travel down East is a tough ride, but other people have not seemed to have an issue with it. Ottawa, New York, another chance for Ottawa to actually do something. Washington, Florence, talking about is there parity or is there not parity in that division? We'll find out. New Jersey, yikes. Sussex and Quebec, man, that's the highlight.
Yeah.
So
it feels like if the Miners can have a good week here, this weekend goes well, you can start to really believe in them, at least in my eyes, because you're going to be on the back half of the Canada trip. And I don't necessarily even need 2 wins. Give me 1, but make the other 2 losses like real tight.
yeah, like their last series against Quebec. I'm with you.
I'd like a little bit tighter than that. I'd like to avoid a shutout, and I'd like nothing worse than a 2-run loss.
That's fair. I forgot about the shutout.
Yeah, like if we can make it a little bit tighter than that in more difficult circumstances, I feel good about that. I feel like, all right, there's a shot here.
Yeah.
But, all right. So on that note, if you want to do your plugs, you can do so now.
Indy Ball Nation on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, podcast platforms. We've got I've just been working my way through first quarter report cards for teams as I dangerously get close towards second quarter report cards, but it's fine. I'd like to give us some breathing room for the first quarter, let teams prove who they are. So I got an American Association one coming. I've got an American Association pair of videos actually I'm cooking up now. So they're getting some shine coming up here in the next couple weeks. So keep an eye on that. And yeah, some other shenanigans, probably TBD, depending on what my free time looks like.
All right. Indy Ball Pod, Twitter, Indy Ball, wherever else. Content on hold until the hand is back and I can actually edit. So we will find out together when that happens. And the only other thing to add is we mentioned about baseball referencing in the American Association last week. Supposedly, that's a coding issue. So it's getting resolved, apparently. We'll see when, but apparently it's getting resolved. Well, that's about it. And I guess so. So I guess until next time, don't forget to play ball.